A couple of weeks ago, I had a Patreon question from Plate, who asked me, as people were kind of gravitating away from 5e or wanted to gravitate away from 5e, what games were most popular. And my response was, it doesn't matter which ones are most popular. What matters is that which ones you want to play with you and your friends. And I got some feedback from this that said popularity does matter because it can be hard to find players who are willing to play RPGs that aren't D&D 5th edition. And those comments are absolutely right. So I realized there's more to this topic than my flippant response that was, don't worry about popularity, just pick the game that you want to play with your group. So I actually posted a query out on my YouTube channel asking people, for those of you who have played other RPGs other than 5th edition or run other RPGs other than 5th edition, how did you get your groups to join in? How did you get people to want to play these other RPGs? And I got about 100 and some responses, and we're going to look at like a summary of those responses. You can find a link to read all of those responses if you want to dig into them yourself. I gave them a good skim read, then I also did pass them into ChatGPT and said, summarize these for me, and we're going to take a look at the summaries that came back. But ChatGPT, being a fancy version of autocorrect, is always kind of picking different things. But I did notice that there was one really big trend that I saw for people who had a hard time getting people to play another RPG and people having an easy time in order to play another RPG. And that was, do you already have a group or not? If you have a group, and if that group likes you and likes the kind of games you're running, and you're all good friends, it's usually, according to the people that responded and my own experience, is that it's usually pretty easy to say, hey, there's this new RPG called Knave. It's kind of D&D, but it's very lightweight. I wondered if you'd be interested in trying that out for a session. And most of the time, you'll find your group says, sure, we'll try it out for a session. They might not be that interested. Maybe they really like 5th edition. But for one session, how bad is it to say, we're going to take a break and we're going to play one session of Knave? So a very common thing was, and this makes sense, right? A very common thing was, if you have a group, you're able to get them to try out a different RPG for a session, maybe 2 sessions, maybe even a longer campaign if you want to. You're probably not going to necessarily get the best response if you've got a bunch of people that love 5th edition and say, we're going to dump 5th edition, I no longer want to run it, and now we're going to run nothing but Shadowdark RPG. Now that's a harder sell, right? You're now trying to sell them on a system that they don't know for one they already know and maybe already like. So that could be tricky. But harder is when you don't have a group at all. It's harder to find people that are going to want to play a RPG that isn't nearly as popular as D&D as it is to find people who are willing to play D&D. If you're going to your local game shop and you put up 2 posters and you say, over here, I want to play Ironsworn or Ironsworn Starforged, and over here, I want to play 5th edition D&D. People know 5th edition D&D, so they're going to run to that one because they understand it. They're not looking for Ironsworn Starforged, so that maybe they'll join in, but probably not, because they're not, when you think about the first group, they're not there to play 5th edition. They're there to play a game with you. They already know you. They know you as a GM. They know the other players. You're a cohesive unit of gaming. And when they're coming to the regular group and they hear that the GM says, hey, I want to try this other system out. Maybe I want to try Monsters of the Week. Then they might go, oh, that sounds interesting. And you can sell it to them already. They already know you. They already like you. They know what kind of game you run. They know what your style is. And they're more willing to try that game out for you than if you are a completely random GM looking for random players. Well, now they're looking for a game. They're not looking for you. They don't even know you yet. They only know games. And the games that they most likely know are D&D 5th edition compared to everything else. I don't think that there's much of like a rack and stack of like game popularity. There's certainly like a bunch of games no one's ever heard of. And then there's a bunch of games that are like, well, they're kind of big as independent role-playing games. They're certainly nowhere close to what D&D 5th edition is. But among that pool, it's probably not that big a deal. If you don't have a group and you're looking to play a particular role-playing game, many, many times those role-playing games have communities of their own that you can go into, talk to people, and they often have an LFG, like a looking for a group. And if you are willing to GM it, you're probably going to find people in that community who are willing to play it. An example would be the Shadowdark RPG. They have a very big Discord server for a bunch of people who are really excited for Shadowdark RPG. You're going to have a lot more luck finding players that want to run Shadowdark with you if you go to the Shadowdark Discord server and talk to Shadowdark people about it. Because again, they've already selected the game. The players that you're looking at, the players that you are going for, they've already picked it out. So you can go to that community. And many of these systems have these communities. Maybe they're a web forum, maybe they're a Discord server. A lot of times they're a Discord server, but you go try to find out where those people who are interested in that game congregate. go meet them there because they've already selected themselves as people that are interested in that particular game, and then see if you can find some players that are willing to do it. If you go to conventions, a lot of times they have sort of the indie RPG section where people are playing lots of different role-playing games. I went to a convention recently. I played 5 role-playing games. I think it was 4 role-playing games in 2 days. None of them were 5th edition D&D. I was very interested in trying these systems out, so we went to a bunch of different ones. So conventions are another way that you can try to find people. And there are online conventions where you can find people. But generally, the comments that I got back from YouTube, the things that I saw that clarified it is if you already have a group, a lot of times that group is willing to try out a new system for a session or two. You might not convince them that to step away from 5th edition completely. One of my groups where we played around with 2 whole systems. We played Blades in the Dark, and then we played Numenera. And we did that for like a good half a year, right, for both of those games. And then we came back to 5th edition D&D because all of us kind of agreed we still really like 5th edition D&D, so we went back that way. But I've had other groups where we can try out different systems. So there's definitely, does popularity matter? Sure, but it matters if what you're really looking for is trying to find a group that you want to work with to play a certain system. If you already have a group, it's probably easier to get them to try out a new system than it is to try to seek out players for a game system that isn't nearly as popular from players that you don't even know and players who don't know you at all. And again, the best way to kind of deal with that is find the community of people who are centered around that game, pick some players from that, and try to work them out. So these were, again, feedback that I got from a lot of people. Here's the whole link with all of the different replies in it. You can read to what everybody individually said. But I also got kind of a summary of what those different comments said. I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, here, I fed it all the 100 questions. I said, what do you find? And it said, offering a new system as a one-shot or short adventure was quite popular. 14 people mentioned that. Pitching the new system and explaining its unique features. Again, that's probably part of the one-shot as well. Running games outside of your regular campaigns or during breaks. So again, if you find a good break point between your campaign, you finished one campaign, you're getting started for another, maybe drop a couple of sessions of a different RPG and system in there to give it a shot and see how it works. Another one is finding systems that work well for those one-shot things. I mentioned Monsters of the Week. Monsters of the Week is a very good one-shot system. It's very easy to pick up, very easy to learn. Blades in the Dark, similar. Blades in the Dark definitely has some options for like longer campaigns, but you can usually get through a good Blades in the Dark campaign in like a session, maybe 2, maybe 4. I think we did about 4 or 5 sessions for our Blades in the Dark campaign. A game like Shadow of the Demon Lord is expecting to only be run in 11 sessions. Now, 11 sessions is quite a bit, but it's certainly not a years-long campaign. But if you can say, hey, I would really like to try Shadow of the Demon Lord, maybe let's try it for 4 or 5 sessions to see how it goes, leveling every session. And then if they like it, say, and now we're going to continue and go on. Running games outside of a regular campaign or during breaks, finding players through online communities and platforms. Again, big one. That's why I'm mentioning it. Recruiting friends and acquaintances who are open to trying new systems. If you've got a group that really want to play 5th edition and you're having trouble convincing them, maybe ask them about maybe some of them are willing to try it, and then you want to bring in some other people that can pick it up. Leveraging existing RPG groups and clubs to introduce new systems. Again, find out where they are. Go where they are and ask them. Creating a safe and conclusive environment for players to explore. Of course, you want to have an environment where people are willing to say, sure, I want to try that out. Playing games in different genres to attract interest. So maybe if you say, hey, this is space-based, or this is sort of more heist-based, or this is modern horror, what are the different genres that you can excite them for, particularly if there's like popular media that you can point to. Say, hey, don't you want to play a game that's more like Stranger Things and a little less like actual D&D? One thing is about making sure that you're playing a system that's relatively easy to learn, relatively easy to teach, and maybe using pre-gen so that you can get into the game fast. One of the issues with bringing in new systems is that players already know the system. They already know what they're doing. They already know what they like. They already know how it works. And then you're coming and saying, hey, here's this whole new super complicated system. The ones that are probably easier to bring in are the ones where you can teach the rules very quickly, get involved, get playing the game as fast as possible. Pre-gen character is a great way to do it. And then, of course, being a game master and offering to run the game yourself is definitely a better way to go than trying to be a player in one of these systems. So that's definitely, those are sort of the summaries of the YouTube comments. But again, you may want to go and actually skim the YouTube comments yourself to find out what different ways people have had at being able to bring new players to their game. But I thought this was very instructional for me. The feedback that I got was very good. I think it's an important topic because I think it's important to try other RPGs. I think it's really fun to try other RPGs. And many times we can learn from these other RPGs and we can bring ideas into other RPGs. So you can find a lot of stuff that you like in other RPGs and bring them back into 5th edition D&D if that's where you end up back again. And again, I love 5th edition D&D. I still play it. I still love it. I still enjoy it a lot. I'm really excited that 5th edition is kind of expanding to all these new companies, Tales of the Valiant, Level Up Advanced 5e, lots of different resources, lots of different source books that we can use, campaign source books like Dungeons of Drakkenheim, lots of different publishers of 5th edition edition now, really wide category, and we can play a whole lot. And even if you're mad at Wizards of the Coast or you're not crazy about the kinds of products they're putting out, there's so much stuff that we can use in our 5th edition D&D games that the idea of throwing out 5th edition completely, I'm also not a big fan of, because I think it's a really good system. I really enjoy it. My players really enjoy it. And we're having a really good time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, where you get a weekly RPG-related email and a free adventure generator PDF sent directly to you for free. You can also support me directly on Patreon, and you can pick up any of my books at the Sly Flourish bookstore. All of the links to those are in the show notes below. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.